Well, hello everybody. I've got the delightful Esmeralda Biberi with me here, and she's from Tirana and she's an advisor to the mayor's cabinet and has been around the block in Tirana more than once. But I have to tell you, I've been to Tirana 15 times, and when I heard about the transformations, I was there a bit when it was transforming, but the cliche of Albania and Tirana was always, oh, it's a bit of a mess. They're all crazy and they do things in ways we don't want them to do. And then over the last few years, suddenly there's been this sort of transformation in the municipality, especially. And you have to say that this is a model of transformation in the sense that there's really been a shift. And the sort of things they've done, we're going to explore in a minute, thing in particular. And Esmeralda and I were just talking about what should we talk about? What should we focus on? And we said, let's focus on the children's side of it, because I think that's quite inspirational. And so our little title is Tirana, Humanizing the City Playfully. So over to you, Esmeralda.
Hi, Charles. It's so nice of you to have me here, and I cannot wait to talk a little bit more and also let the photos talk for the projects we've developed in Tirana. We made this great project a few years ago about, creating a city for children and for all, but generally for children. So we made a few interventions during the time that we thought would humanize the city, and I want to show more during the presentation of what we've come up with. So, just to give you a background of the city of Tirana and Albania in general, for those who are curious, uh, Albania is in Europe. It's the other side of the heel of Italy, and we've had a huge influence from three different empires, let's say, or states, including Ottoman Empire, including the Eastern Bloc and European Union, hopefully recently. And for that, I'm going to show you a bit of the progress of Tirana. So this is a map of 1921. It used to be 17,000 inhabitants, so a very small, tiny city. And this is how the city has changed in terms of population from that year to now. And from a city of, let's say, 17,000, in 25 years, we've become a city of 800,000 residents. These are the official registered residents. We think that's about 1 million, of including students and commuting citizens. So basically, a few years ago, we collaborated with EBRD, well known for the project of green cities, and we decided that we're going to do some action plans on how to develop Tirana in a sustainable way with very short-term goals. And some of the short-term goals included changing the city for children and for other citizens that are not well represented. We say that, for example, if most of your city is, not owning a car, then we should budget for the most city. And what we started to do is we made up 13 strategic projects in collaboration. When I say we made up, I more intend to say that we made a huge study of a master plan with 13 strategic goals for Tirana. These goals and objectives were designed in collaboration with a great architect, as Stefano Boeri. He's pretty famous for the vertical forest in Milan, for those who are curious again. So these strategic projects include many things, and in it also the orbital forests. It sounds very fancy, but basically it includes a ring of 2 million trees by 2030 that will curb the urban sprawl. But, saying 2 million trees and planting 2 million trees are two different things. So basically what we did is that we started mapping these trees in order to know exactly what kind of short-term goals we need. And the short-term goals we designed for ourselves were that we're going to start planting 100,000 trees every year. And one of our most popular let's say, campaigns for trees has been Donate a Tree by the city of Tirana. And this resulted in more than 60% of trees annually, meaning that from 100,000, 60,000 were planted by donations. And these donations had everything from, donate a tree for your birthday, where kids, for their own annual feast, they could donate a tree, plant a tree, name it after them, and take care of that tree. This sort of created a community sense for the children, because if you're part of the city and that thing or that plant is yours, then you have a feeling of taking care of it and be responsible for something. So this worked pretty great, because by the end of the 2 years, every child wanted to plant a tree for their birthday. And most of the times, also the mayor joined to help them plant that, including celebrities and very small kids. Of course, the work was more symbolical, and now everyone had a tree by their, birthday. Other initiatives that we worked on were creating public spaces. Why was this important? Was because by creating public spaces, we would again create a community sense to get together and join in a specific area. You know how they say, if you make it, they will come. So one of the major transformation was the Skanderbeg, or Skanderbeg Square as we call it, which is, it used to be, this is an old picture, it used to be one of the biggest roundabouts in the Balkans. And this is before it became a pedestrian area. So around 100,000 cars would pass there every day. And then from this roundabout, we created one of the spaces, the biggest pedestrian space in Europe, in Balkan, sorry. And we won also a great prize for it, which is the Emerging Countries Public Space. So this is how the greatest roundabout looks now, where we hold concerts and many other activities, all pedestrian and surrounded by a forest, which is part of the orbital forest. This created the great atmosphere of people gathering. And of course, the pictures are before the pandemic. And other projects that we worked on were the amphitheater of the Grand Lake of Tirana, which also were left unused and deteriorated through the years. But now they were completely renovated, and that helped a lot to give many destinations to the city. And it actually helped a lot also during the pandemic, because everything that we couldn't, organize inside, we had an alternative great theater of organizing outside activities, so the, social city life would not completely die. Another initiative that we found very interesting, we joined the World Mural Festival. And these are pictures from the buildings in Tirana. So these buildings that were old and probably since, the communist regime, we started decorating them with graphics and paintings from world-known painters, which gave a little bit life to the city, and a kind of a cool treasure hunting, because in every corner you would get surprised by these graphic and designs and paintings. And now I'm going to drop a bit the playful side of for children. The playful side is that we started designing all these playgrounds for children in areas, in very different areas of Tirana, sort of an acupuncture around the city. These playgrounds were adapted for different ages, from different needs, because of course, where a 3-year-old plays, a 16-year-old will need another kind of playground. So I'm going to show you a little bit of how we transformed the corners of the city by showing pictures from, before and after. Curious thing is that we also saw a mix of intergenerational ages, because the parks did not only serve for children to play, but it also enabled their grandparents to relax there and watch over their grandchildren in a very safe and common way. So basically, this is one of the playgrounds. We designed 56 playgrounds in 56 months, which is quite a goal, to be honest, because of the many procedural documents that we prepare every year. So if you can see the play before and play after, you can see how a neighborhood that looked like this was transformed into something like this. And as they say, build them as they will come. This is what happened with most neighborhoods. We got these idle spaces where no one was staying or using them, and we transformed them into colorful, playful grounds full of trees and a lot of toys for children to pass their time. And somehow everyone got to also their neighbor, which is one of the challenges when living in a digital world. We took care of most of the playgrounds to have also objects that were usable by children of vulnerable groups or with different abilities. This is a map of Tirana, and all the green spots are the playgrounds that were added in order to cover a huge area and make sure that most of the neighborhoods had access to a pocket park nearby or playground for the children. And now I'm going to skip the playgrounds and go to another fun area that we organized for the city and for the city's children, which is the bike lanes. So Tirana, from 0 bike lanes, went to 40 kilometer of bike grid. And our intention is to get to 47, which are planned in order to have the minimum grid of the central city. And this will allow for small distances, like 5 kilometers, to be covered in bikes in order to avoid taking your car to short distances. And one of the ways we tried to provide for the children was to teach them how to bike since a small age, because one of the most difficult changes we had to do is more in a sort of mentally, because citizens were used to use their car and were used to never bike. So this was the most challenging part, to mentally prepare citizens that they can bike to a space and they can use the bike and it's safe for them to use it. So we started also with the younger generation, because they are the ones who will, protect the city in the future and kind of develop it for better. And these classes were very successful because most of the children wanted bikes. And, if parents don't listen to the city of Tirana, they generally listen to their children. So this worked very well for the city, for them to, learn biking in a safe way. And we believe that everyone who got a bike when they were 3, they will probably bike also when they're 15 or 25. We involved a lot of organizations in order to have as many stakeholders involved as possible to design the roads and the signage for the city. And additionally to that, the playful part was also the white lines where you cross the streets. By making them more colorful, especially in the streets near the schools, we made them also more safe. So children and drivers would be more aware of the walks that are allowed for pedestrians if they were more playful and colorful. This is also part of the Grand Lake of Tirana. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Esmeralda. There's just a couple of things I wanted to highlight or ask a question about. You got the kids to ride bikes. Do grown-ups also now ride bikes, or more than before?
Oh, yes, it's actually one of the statistics that we were most amazed that even before the pandemic, but we had a rise in the number of bikes were sold in Tirana. So this was one of the statistics that were fed into the city hall. And it was amazing because by building a few bike lanes, we saw a huge rise in the number of bikes. And it happened to be a great decision, especially in the light of the pandemic, which we didn't know about at the time, because then most of people again bought more bikes in order to avoid public transport. So actually, the pandemic and lockdown highlighted what a good decision that was.
Yeah, yeah. So that was foresight in a
A
certain
happy
way,
accident.
a happy coincidence, absolutely.
Yes.
And and just on those, I mean, because Tirana, I know there are hills nearby, but in general, it's quite flat, so it's quite a bikeable city. What about cars? I mean, do car drivers behave slightly differently? You know, typically a car, I've got a Mercedes, I'm macho, hey, get out of the way, and all of that. I mean, have the guys decided to be a bit more careful or not?
You definitely know the mentality of Albania, and it shows that you really have been here in the past. Because after the communist regime, there was this concept that the car was a sort of luxury and a sort of standard that they needed to show everywhere. So we had a lot of drivers that were driving cars in short distances, and they considered it as a status for them, owning a car. And now it's we've made so many, signals, and generally watching kids bike more, it makes most of the citizens more responsible and more aware. But of course, it needs a lot of learning, and it's a matter of time. But we see the progress because, every day we see more bikers, more bike lanes, and of course, more attention to them.
Uh, Another question, just in terms of that amazing forest that you conceived, how long is it if you look at it? I mean, it was a lovely, funny line, but how long is all of that together?
Well, it's a bit more complex than that, to be honest. The thing is that the whole forest, it's called orbital because it has many rings within one ring. So
Uh-huh.
Stefano Boyer, in collaboration with the city of Tirana, created many rings that intersect with each other, and these would help. They were called also blue corridors or green corridors, and this would help also with biking because the city of Tirana gets around 40 degrees in summer, which is very tough for the bikers. And by creating a lot of circles that intersect in the form of an orbit, then you can create also paths where bikers can use their bikes even in hot degrees because of the shadows you create. Uh, the designs, they're not very, let's say, concrete in terms of how many kilometers is the ring, but they are more concrete in the count of the trees, which is 2 million trees by 2030. And so far, we have planted around 300,000, and we just opened the new season of planting, which starts from September to March 2021 until 2022. So within these frames, we managed to plant around 100,000 trees, but usually we always surpass that target for around 7 months, which means around 500 trees per day.
All right, that's quite a figure. Just another question, which I'm just thinking about the organizational side of things, because you said there's one thing to talk about something and there's another thing to do it. And you were talking about there's always procedural things that we know exist everywhere. And I don't even know how to ask the question. How did you do that? How did you get those procedures either to speed up or did procedures change at all in order to do that quickly?
Um, One of the things that it comes in the way is that you become very creative when your budget is limited. So let's say a city is Tirana with a million population and a city is Zagreb in Croatia. Zagreb probably has 7 times the budget of Tirana in terms of what they can spend and on how they can spend it. And it's very difficult to convince your citizens to sort of dedicate a project or a budget to sustainable projects when there are many other things that have priority, especially when you dedicate the budget to those who don't pay taxes, which are kids. And the way we did it, we sort of started making many campaigns for donations and involved many companies that helped us to arrange for these playgrounds. And once you start with a company of one of the biggest companies, and you market that, and you know emphasize how good they've been about this specific project for children, then the others always come by. Also, sort of a celebrity involvement in the process helped a lot, because if they would be happy to contribute a little bit for the kids of the city, then also others wanted to join. So we had a huge donation campaign, and made everyone a bit more involved with the kindergartens, with the schools, and playgrounds specifically.
So I suppose because you created a sort of momentum, also the people who were dealing with procedures probably said, okay, let's do it quicker, or let's make them looser,
Yeah,
or something like that. I mean, another
we
question. Sorry, you go.
we had Dua Lipa in town. She was visiting for her own pleasure, and she also planted a tree for the city, and also contributed to a new kindergarten for the city. So these people kind of, with their little help, help create a chain of involvement for the others.
So back to then finance for a moment. So in short, you're saying that you have less budget than many other cities. So in a sense, you will be able to get private interests involved in helping to support you. I mean, the other thing that I'm quite interested in, because you know the history of Albania. We know that had a dark side as well, and a lot of the issues that were difficult is about social capital and civic engagement and so on. And you mentioned that this whole children process and the other ones are really were creating some sort of sense of civic bonding and community and so on. I mean, presumably you've noticed that happen on the ground. Is that true?
Yes, because what was happening in the beginning of the mandate in the city hall is that we didn't see many children in the city around. So our average age is around 35 years old, which is one of the youngest in Europe. And for that sort of average age of the city, we were not seeing enough children in the city. So most of them were playing indoors or in grounds, and especially in cities where development goes faster than urban planning, it usually causes for illegal buildings and illegal settlements and stuff like that. So by creating these public spaces which were safe and colorful and and welcoming, we started seeing children everywhere more frequently, and this sort of gave the city another vibe, to be honest.
Yeah, and so you mentioned, for example, that old people and young people were connecting, obviously grandparents and kids. I presume, I mean, what I like about that is that whole thing about the intergenerational thing. So presumably there are also middle-aged people who are also in these places, just, I don't know, having a conversation, having a coffee or something like that. Is so in short, these are general gathering places, it seems you're saying.
Yes. Most of them, they started because you also learn by building playgrounds. We built better the 56th one than the first one, because by seeing also the needs of citizens one after the other, we started adding more things. So we started adding more devices that were able to be used by younger children, like 2 years olds or 3 year olds. And we used also strategies like Urban 95, so sort of designs, urban design for people who are 95 centimeters, which is usually 3 year old to 5 year old. And also 8 to 80 cities that are friendly for an 8 year old and cities who are friendly for an 80 year old. So we started embedding all these strategies in our design and in our urban design, and led to spaces improving by time and also being usable by most people, and making them have access to many spaces previously unknown in the city.
So just remind me again, when did all of that process start with the strategic plan and the 13 strategic projects? I mean,
Uh,
how far are
um,
we into that now?
with the new mayor of Tirana, Mr. Erion Veliaj, we started in 2017 to design it, and in 2018 the master plan was approved in the city hall. And also after that, in collaboration with EBRD, the Green City Action Plan, which is like a short-term follow-up plan to make sure that the master plan of 2030 is completed. So it creates like little steps one by one. And with the help of EBRD, we had a very concrete project development, a list of projects to develop. So from 2018 until now, 2021, there were a huge number of changes that are small. They're generally limited in budget, but they make a huge difference for citizens who use them.
Yeah, I mean, what that reminds me of is 100 small projects done well is better than one wow project that is, I don't know, some massive, I don't know, building, because you're really talking about weaving the city together. It feels like a carpet or textile that you're sort of knitting it together in various ways.
Yes. And you know, if you build highways, you'll have always more cars. But if you playgrounds, you'll always have more children outside playing.
Well, look, Esmeralda, that's great. I think people now realize, I hope they realize, they better realize that changes are afoot, and you better change your perceptions if you have negative ones of Tirana and Albania. It's a place that's really happening. So thank you very much, and it was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Charles. It was my pleasure.